Hi everyone, how are you doing? Welcome to my relative clause session 2. In my last session, I told you about what is a relative clause, what is a clause in grammar, how relative clauses work, and the function of relative pronoun. So today's session is about relative adverbs and the types of relative clauses, defining and non-defining. Well, what is a relative adverb? If you remember, in our previous class, we learnt about relative pronouns, how relative pronouns helps relative clause function in a better way. In the same manner, relative adverbs also help. You see, it's so simple. If you are a vegetarian or a non-vegetarian, that doesn't matter. You want to eat different types of foods. Sometimes you want leafy vegetables and sometimes you want dal, or sometimes you want a non-vegetarian food. It's the same way the relative pronouns and relative adverbs works. So let's look into this topic, relative adverbs. When, where, why. We use these relative adverbs to link a relative clause with the connection of time, place, and reason. When. We use when after time or time words such as day or year. The first example, do you remember the day when you first entered the college? Now, here we are remembering the time when a person entered the college for the first time. Well, now you are remembering the time when you first entered the college. Next, my favorite season is spring, when trees begin to grow new leaves. Again, here he is talking about the season, which is a spring season. Everyone has their favorite season. I think most of you like summer season because you got to spend some time with your families. Next, where. We use where after people, after place or place words like room, street, town, country, etc. I want to see the hospital where I was born. Here we are talking about the place, or here you can also think it's a room where that particular person was born. I'm sure everyone would have asked your parents, especially your mother, how you were born and the happy times when you came into the family. The next example, they showed me the place where they had translocated the huge banyan tree. Here again, we are talking about a place. Next, why. We use why after reason. The first example, tell me why you came late to the interview. I intentionally did not read what was written in the brackets because when you are saying why, you are asking what is the reason that you have come late to the interview. In the next example, there are various reasons why we must complete the project on time. So we use why after a reason. Our next topic is types of relative clauses, defining and non-defining. Well, let me tell you, this is a very interesting topic. I'm sure you will love it. So there are types of relative clauses, defining and non-defining. Look at these two sentences containing relative clauses. That's the girl who won the first prize in singing competition. My nephew who lives in New Delhi is a civil engineer. In the first sentence, the relative clause adds essential information. That means very important information. While in the second sentence, it adds extra information. Now, let me tell you an example. Sometimes you ask your friends, where did you study? Or where were you born? And they will be telling, I was born in the city. And some people will say, I studied in this particular college. Let me give you a very funny example. If someone knows a very famous personality, he would say, my friend is so and so person. He's a celebrity. He's a famous person, which is an extra information, because we want to know about your friend, not about the other people whom he is boasting about, just to showcase that he knows these people. So now you know what is essential information and extra information. Let's look into it a little bit deeper and little bit further. Point number 1. A defining relative clause provides essential information. A non-defining relative clause supplies extra information. This we have already seen. Essential is very important. Extra is not so important. Point number 3. A defining relative clause gives specific information that helps in identifying the person or thing that we are talking about. That means it gives us very valuable information. Whereas a non-defining clause gives additional information about the person or the thing that we are talking about. This information is not necessary to identify that person or a thing. Suppose if you ask someone, is your mom or is your mother at home? My mom, who is a doctor, is not at home. Come on, no one is asking if your mother is a doctor or not. All we are asking is your mother is at home or not? Fourth point. Just now I have explained it. Next, the fifth point is a non-defining relative clause is usually separated from the rest of the sentence by a comma or commas. So it's very simple. A non-defining relative clause is separated by a comma. Let's see this example. My nephew who lives in New Delhi. Can you see here? It's separated by a comma. Who lives in New Delhi is a civil engineer. So that is also another way of finding out if it is a non-defining relative clause. Now, how to know if a relative clause is defining or non-defining? Well, here is a tip that I'm going to tell, which will help you to understand the difference. We can know whether a relative clause is defining or non-defining by removing it from the sentence. If you remove a non-defining relative clause, the sentence has the same meaning. If we remove a defining relative clause, the sentence has a different meaning or is incomplete. It will not make some sense, or grammatically it would not be proper. The first example, the girl who won the first prize in the singing competition. What is it? That's the girl who won the first prize in the singing competition. Second sentence, my nephew who lives in New Delhi is a civil engineer. If I remove the relative clause in the first sentence, who won the first prize? Please, I have underlined it for you. Who won the first prize from this first example, then the sentence would be incomplete. Let me read it out for you. That's the girl in the singing competition. Have you seen? So much of incompleteness. Whereas, if I add this who won the prize, the girl, that's the girl who won the first prize in the singing competition. then it becomes a complete sentence. It gives a complete meaning. Here, we can know the difference between a defining relative clause. Next sentence. On the other hand, if we remove the relative clause, again, who lives in New Delhi, which I have underlined it for you, from the second example, then there will be no difference in the meaning. The meaning will be same and the sentence will also be the same because it's an extra information. Let me read out for you. My nephew is a civil engineer. Have you seen it? My nephew is a civil engineer. So the relative clause who lives in New Delhi is extra information. It is a non-defining relative clause. So friends, now that we have known what is a relative clause, what is a relative pronoun, what is a relative adverb, and what are the uses and what are the advantages if you use it properly. And I hope you would definitely work on this relative clauses, especially from your textbooks. There are some exercises which are given on page number 159. So please go through that exercises and practice it so that you would understand this information in a much better way. Thank you very much. Have a great time.